In this video, we're going to talk about course substitutions. And course substitutions are so important because it can affect a student's financial aid if a student is taking a class that's appearing under that other category under their progress. Financial aid is not going to pick up that class, when in reality, if a course substitution is valid and should be done, if it's done early, financial aid would then be able to pick it up. It can also have an impact on a student's graduation. For a lot of students, they are unable to apply for graduation when in reality they could have if a course substitution was done, maybe to move some hours around or maybe to substitute one class for another. So when should you do a course substitution, or what kind of student would need a course substitution? And this document is posted in the Moodle page. Students who have taken a higher level course that can be counted for a lower level requirement. So the example there, you could take Math 171 and substitute it for Math 110. You could take Psych 150 and substitute it for Psych 118. If you're ever unsure if a course is a higher level course, you can always reach out to the chair of that department and they could let you know. You also have students who have transfer courses that are not offered here at Carteret, but they could be counted towards their program of study. And the example given there is if a student transferred in English 113, which we don't offer here at Carteret, but it is part of the CAA transfer list, which I'll talk about in just a second. So since it is a transferable course, it could be counted towards the student's program of study. Again, if that course was sitting there under the other category, when you go to their progress in Carteret Compass, it's not going to be counted towards graduation, when in reality, that's one less class a student would have to take. You could also have an applied science or health science students that have an elective requirement, but maybe the student has taken a different course from that same transfer category that would work. The decision there lies within the program chair, but an example would be if a student takes Music 110, which is a humanities course, but the program has a requirement of Art 111, which is art appreciation, but that's also a humanities course. So if the chair is willing to do that, you could do a course substitution one for the other. So that's, again, one less elective the student has to take. And then the last type of student who would need a course substitution, sometimes transfer students can have extra hours, and that can happen either in the math category of their degree, or that can happen in their general education elective category. So the example given there is an associates in art student that has a 3 credit hour math requirement, but they decide to take a 4 credit hour course, Math 171. That extra hour can be moved down to either one of the students' elective categories, either general education electives or pre-major electives. And that 1 hour could really make a difference upon when the student's going to graduate or if the student's going to graduate. So let's look at some examples of filling out a course substitution form for these type of situations. So in this one, you've got a student who's a medical assisting student. The required course part of this degree is Math 110, but the student has taken Math 143. Maybe she switched programs of studies. So you could do the required course again, you'd put Math 110, the substituted course, you would put the course prefix and number, which is Math 143, and then what kind of requirement was it from their program. And so there is a natural science math requirement, so that's what's making that substitution there. Down at the bottom of the page, if you're the advisor, you're going to put the name, your signature, and the date here. You will forward it on to your dean, who will fill out this information, which will then forward it on to the registrar to be able to complete that course substitution. This example here, John Doe is a criminal justice student. He has taken the requirement is political science, so Poly 120. But the student, maybe it was a transfer student who's decided to switch to criminal justice, had taken History 132 in the past. Now, both of these courses, Poly 120 and History 132, are social science courses within the transfer program of study. So, if the chair of that program is willing to make that substitution, you could do that substitution because it's from the same category of a transfer degree. So if you're ever wanting to know, are these classes from the same category, you can look at the CAA agreement list of transfer courses, which I have posted in Moodle. So if you go to this link here that's posted in Moodle, the most updated list will be listed first. And so if I pull up the 2022 list here, you can see all the transfer courses that are offered across the state of North Carolina. And then over here on the right-hand side is how they're classified. So whether or not they're classified as a UGETC, which you'll learn about later on in our advising course under the transfer information, whether they're a gen ed elective, whether they're a pre-major elective, and then how they're classified, whether it be a social behavioral science, a humanities, whether it's just a general pre-major elective, whether it's a natural science. So again, it's a pretty easy case to make a course substitution if they fall within the same transfer designation or the same transfer category. The next type would be a transfer student who's maybe transferred in other classes that are also found within that transfer list. So again, if you're ever wondering, does this class transfer? Should this student be able to count these classes? If it's on this list here and they're a transfer student, then yes, you can certainly do a course substitution for that student. So this student has taken, let me go back. This student has taken French 111, PED 130, and PED 132, all of which we don't offer here at Carteret, but they all count towards the transfer degree. You would need to look at that list just to see how they transfer, whether it be a gen ed elective or a pre-major elective. Another case of a transfer student would be a student who has an extra hour. So I mentioned a while ago, sometimes a student will take a math class that's a 4 credit hour class, but they only needed 3 credit hours. Well, what you can do is you can move that extra hour to whatever category of their degree that they would need. So for example, maybe the student's about to graduate, they need more pre-major electives. So you can say the student needs 1 hour of a pre-major elective, and I'm going to substitute that extra math hour that they took to fill that place. You can always do, even if they're not about to graduate, it certainly will help a student by going ahead and moving this hour so they know how many classes they have left to graduate. Another example of this would be maybe the student has a requirement for their general education elective and they have extra hours there. So for example, a student needs 14 general education elective hours to be an associate's in art student, but this student took 16 hours. Well, you can take those extra 2 hours from the general education elective category and you can bump it down and move it to the pre-major elective category to again help that student out. That's another 2 hours that they don't need to take to graduate. If you ever have any questions about course substitutions, you can certainly reach out to your chair or your dean, or the registrar's office would be able to help you.